I forget how this whole discussion actually even started. I forget if it started with a blog or not, but we had a listener send us some work that they had written around the discussion of oppression, and whether you sort of further oppress yourself by identifying as oppressed. So when you start to label yourself as a person of color, when you start to engage in rhetoric and conversations that always talks about the fact that you are hunting for more rights, searching for more rights, looking to boast yourself and get a bigger piece of the pie, let's say, that those mental gymnastics actually are worse for you and therefore keep you oppressed. In the same way that Kanye West sort of says slavery for 400 years was a choice, in the same kind of rhetoric of we could have fought our way, I guess, to the top or out of this. I wrote a blog expressing my opinion at the time, which is still the same, which is no. I disagree with that comment. I won't elaborate first, though. I will ask the two of you, and I will start with Clinton. What do you think? Do you think saying that you are a mixed race person who has been oppressed by the system that we live in further oppresses you?
Okay, first, so the listener themselves didn't write the articles. A listener sent us an article of a woman who has a huge following on social media, who has chosen to live her life by refusing to say that she is an oppressed person or that she's ever been oppressed. That's kind of the gist of it, right? So your question to me is acknowledging that as a mixed person, I have been oppressed, does that make me further oppressed, correct?
Correct.
Absolutely not. And I think the first problem with articles like this and people that have these kinds of opinions is they put it into the context that people who acknowledge oppression and say they're oppressed spend 24 hours of their day walking around crying and saying like, oh, Lordy me, I'm so oppressed. I'm so sad. Oh my goodness. They're just like, that's not how it is. That's not how it is at all. The act of acknowledging oppression is just the act of acknowledging reality. If there is a group of people being oppressed and it is a fact and it is true, then acknowledging it doesn't make them more oppressed. Acknowledging something is the only way to break through something and overcome it. Like, if I was literally on fire and I was complaining that I was on fire, and would someone walk up to me and say, oh, well, dude, it's because you're saying you're on fire that you're on fire. Just stop saying you're on fire and the fire is going to go out. That's not true. Now, it's not beneficial to spend your life, feeling oppressed, succumbing to oppression, feeling that because systemically society has oppressed a certain group of people, things can never change. That's no good either. And there's definitely something to be said about the fact that not focusing on a negative thing helps you not be as aware of it, so not be as affected by it, or not realize that you're being as affected by it. But that doesn't mean you're not being affected by it. You might go through life a lot happier, happy-go-lucky, if you don't acknowledge oppression. And you may not be let down as much by when it happens, because you may be able to attribute other things to it. Like, for instance, I've heard Fidel say numerous times, like in New Brunswick when he got here and he was trying for certain grants or applications, and he kept asking himself, well, why I wonder why I'm looking around at other people getting these opportunities and I'm not, until one day he realized, oh, I think it's because of my skin. That didn't make him any more oppressed. He was already, I don't know if that's the exact story, Fidel, or how you would tell it, but that didn't, realizing that and acknowledging it didn't make him any more oppressed than he already may have been in the past. So to summarize that answer, kind of similar to what I think you folks may say, is that no, like, if a group is oppressed, the only way to work through that oppression is to acknowledge it and break it apart, see where it needs to be changed, and fix it. If you want to deny oppression, you just want to ignore the fact that there has been a societal problem for hundreds and hundreds of years, and that's just turning a blind eye to someone being on fire.
Fidel, what about you? What do you think?
I mean, we have to go with what oppression means, and I think, because of the world has changed in so many cycles, uh there's different things of what you can tell what oppression is, but the main definition of oppression is malicious or unjust treatment of exercise of power, often in the guise of governmental authority. So oppression is when you do malicious intent or unjustified treatment. And now, again, mostly and often under the governmental authority. When people of color, and this is what I don't know if that person read it, and the other person says feeling oppressed, and I don't know exactly, how they interpret it, but history, not me, not Fidel Franco, not Hilary LeBlanc, not Clinton Davis or anybody else, history has shown us that laws were made to oppress people of color. That's not a theory. That's not me say. That is just a fact. You can look it up in a history book. Uh, in New Brunswick, there was laws that black people couldn't own a home or a piece of land in a certain area. There was laws that black people couldn't go to certain places. There was laws that black people couldn't get certain jobs. There was laws that did not let equal pay for people of color. Uh, that is oppression. It's a system that is in. Now, if you're saying, let's say, perfectly, okay, that was 50, 60, 30, 40 years ago. Let's just say that you're going to the fact. This is 21st century. This is, and then in the state or province, sorry, of New Brunswick, which we live, if I go and say 10 racist things and oppress people and say the mean things and try to do things to that person because of the color of their skin, I don't get arrested. It's not a crime. I am free to do whatever. And that's a way of oppression. I mean, if we're going by that sense. Now, what I would give to the person that wrote the article, I'm pretty sure they might live in the United States, which is even worse than Canada. Uh, when you think about oppression, if you think of it from a personal perspective, cool, more power to you. Live yourself. However, there is a system. You don't see it. You won't buy that if your name is Lakeisha Thompson and my name is, you know, Joanna or Jenny Thompson, and I happen to be white and you happen to be black, most likely there are things that are going to happen to that white person better than what you do. You probably will get, if you are in a certain type of color, you probably will experience things like poverty more than somebody else. You will probably experience uh, income inequality. If you're a woman, that will happen to you as well, no matter what the color that you are. But if you're a black woman, that will happen less to you. And again, this is all recorded and this is all happening right now, and that what oppression is. You don't have control of oppression. You don't have control of the system. There's rules and mechanisms that you can do, such as voting, such as running for state, or trying to change your municipal or state or federal or whatever type of government you're trying to do. But oppression is made by different mechanisms. It's just not one thing. If you don't feel oppressed, cool, amazing. You don't feel it, that's on you. But the system that you live in has a totally different mechanism that if you have a certain color of skin, depending on where you are, you might be suffering from that. So that's what I have to say about that particular.
I think that it's those things on top of the fact that whoever wrote the article, well, that's not a fair way to start that sentence. I guess for myself personally, I don't think that announcing to the world that I am oppressed will further my oppression, because it's not going to make the system worse for me. Me acknowledging the way the system is doesn't then immediately have a consequence where it gets doubled down against me. Like, life doesn't change just because I am demonstrably saying to people, this thing that you've created does not suit me. This is not fair to me in the way that I was born and not something that I can control. And I also just think that, and I had this conversation not that long ago with a friend, as like a racialized or marginalized person, I don't know about the two of you outside of this podcast, I happen to have these conversations all the time. Like, if someone is not pointing out my race to me in a racist way or in an inquisitive way, there are other people who are racialized who want to have these conversations where they can be open about what they're going through or talk about shared life experiences. And I feel like that might be part of the reason why this podcast exists. So if you're often talking about the fact that you are racialized, I don't think it can have any more of a negative impact on my mental headspace to say to people, yes, I'm oppressed, yes, the system isn't working for me, when I'm already a part of a podcast trying to amplify Black voices. I'm already doing all of these other things to sort of support Black Lives Matter movement, support Black creators, etc., because it's just become a part of my personhood to be like, yes, I'm Black, that shouldn't matter, but until it doesn't matter, I'm going to try to help other Black people. So saying I'm oppressed doesn't hurt me worse mentally. It's like, yeah, and I'm going to work to change that, to leave a better place for the next generation of kids that are also Black or POC or racialized or whatever identity they have that they can't change. That's how I feel.
Absolutely. And that's a perfect thing that you were just saying. Now, like, you can acknowledge that you're oppressed and you're going to work hard to make things less oppressive for the next generation. So it's easy to argue, like, it's easy and it's true to argue that, of course, I would say that Black people are less oppressed than we were a decade ago, and then 20 years ago, and 30 and 40 and 50 and 60 years ago. But that progress wasn't made on the back of people refusing to acknowledge the oppression that they were stuck within in the system. That progress came from people knowing they were oppressed and fighting hard to break down those barriers to oppression. So now here in 2021, if someone says, well, you know, we got it to 75%, let's stop saying we're oppressed. Let's stop thinking about it, guys. Come on, like, we can go to the bar, like, Netflix is on, we did get a job, we're all good now. Like, that's, you got to keep fighting for this goal of true equality, which hopefully society will eventually get to. But yeah, it's, talking about it doesn't increase it. And if you choose not to acknowledge it as an individual and that makes you happy, more power to you.
I think again, I think when you say oppression, depending on how you're looking at it, again, it's not something that, would you tell the next Black person, do you want to feel oppressed? Of course it would say, no, I don't want to feel oppressed. Of course, nobody wants to feel oppressed. That is not the way that humans are built. Humans usually want the best for them. We are selfish beings. That's how we are. We want the best for ourselves. And therefore, if we get the best things, we spread it to our family, friends, or close ones. That's usually how most humans work. But oppression, when you say oppression, you have to be careful of that. Like, if personally you don't feel it, that's a personal feeling. You can feel whatever you, however you want. You can feel festive, sad, happy, whatever you want to feel. However, when it comes to the system that you live in, again, the system that we live in right now in Canada is not meant for people of color. It's meant to oppress them. The police was made to oppress people of color because police was an enforcement for the slave trade. That's what it was built for. Not to serve and protect all people. It has changed during the year, but that was not how the police was built. When you look at things such as civil rights in Canada were modified in 1977, that all people should be able to get some type of discrimination or some type of rights for discrimination. Before 1977, that wasn't the case for indigenous or people of color. So I think that's one thing that we have to make sure that one thing is a personal feeling, which is totally cool. If you feel a certain type of way, cool. And one thing is the system that we live in, which is it's a collectiveness. And unfortunately, the collective, to certain points of history, was going to oppress people of color. That's what I would say.